I wanted to say good day to you this day of your time. How are you all? All right. Thank you. Thank you once again for the co-creation of these interactions and the allowance of this transmission in this way at this time. We would like to begin this transmission by reminding you that it is titled Nature's Social Network. The idea being that there are a variety of ways that different elements, different expressions in nature communicate with one another, because you are all immersed in a web of energy and information. But there are very specific ways in which these connections in the energy web are expressed depending upon the expression of nature. First, we remind you that you do not exist in nature, you are nature. Your bodies are an expression of the nature of the reality that you have chosen to experience. We know that for some time, many individuals within humanity have, in the past, thought of themselves as being separate from nature, maybe living in it, maybe being surrounded by it, but not necessarily considering themselves to be of it. But you are. Your world has given you the ability to crystallize a physical form out of the elements of nature that exist in your reality at your vibratory level of energy, rendering that energy, crystallizing that energy into what you call the perception of matter. So you are absolutely an extension of nature on Earth. But in societies that exist on your planet who have forgotten that, not everyone, but many, then there is an important need to allow yourselves to begin to experience yourselves once again, as you did long ago, as expressions of nature. This would be the first step in being capable of perceiving and connecting in a conscious way to the web of information, the web of energy that connects you all, that connects all nature, all things, in your experience of reality. But we will begin by describing one of the ways, or two of the ways, or maybe three of the ways, we will see, that different expressions in nature have of expressing this connectivity and utilizing this connectivity in a variety of ways to support life, to support consciousness and its expressions in your reality. Let us begin with the trees. We have talked about the idea from time to time that trees, in a sense, are very much like antennae protruding upwards into the sky from the earth. And the way they are structured, based on certain mathematical ratios, they are sensitive to many different kinds of higher level energies, and they can, like an antenna, receive those energies in the very fine tips of their branches and leaves, and transform and transmit and step down and allow that energy to be guided into the earth, to be used in a variety of ways, to be tapped into by whatever needs to tap into that energy at whatever frequency is relevant for the different life form that may choose to tap into that energy and utilize that connective energy web. But more than that, deep underground, in the roots of trees and plants, there is another expression of this connective network, this social network. In any given group of trees, you will find in these forests that the roots of the trees, in whatever way they may choose to spread out, are also connected to what has been termed in your language the mycelial network. The mycelial network is a type of growth of fungal filaments that attach to the roots and go from one tree to another, to another, to another, to another, throughout the grove, throughout the forest. So in a forest where the trees are dense, all the trees are connected underground by their roots through this fungal mycelial network. Now, this network of filaments that connect all these roots are not only for the purpose of transmitting energy, are not only for the purpose of transmitting information, but they provide a true demonstration of the intelligence inherent in all life forms on your planet, whether you think they are necessarily intelligent or not. Not only can information and energy be transmitted through the mycelial network in much the same way that your neural net in your brains transmit impulses, electrical impulses, between all the different neurons, this mycelial network can transmit those kinds of impulses, but also serves many other functions. The mycelial network can actually transmit water from one tree to another where water may be lacking. So the trees that are receiving more water will know through the information of the mycelial network which trees may not be receiving enough water, and they will actually intentionally send more water through the mycelial network to the trees that require it. They will send food and nutrients through the mycelial network as well to the trees that require it. This is a true transport system underground for the trees of a forest. And there is vast amount of information, vast amount of exchange going on under your feet when you walk through a forest, like an underground subway network that you may not even have been aware of going on just a few feet underground, right under your feet. All this talk, all this communication, foodstuffs, water, impulses back and forth, it's very busy going on under there. It's its own kind of city. Now, sometimes you can tell where these mycelial networks might be because one of the offshoots of the fungal filaments might be that at a certain point, mushrooms and other fungal forms will come up through the ground, showing you exactly where some of these mycelial networks may have blossomed into another expression and form of life that then aids and assists and adds to the overall communication web going on in that forest. One of the things that has come down through stories and legends on your planet is the idea of what you call fairy rings, which are usually described as the idea of mushrooms in a circle forming a fairy ring, as you call it, to which different forms of nature spirits and elementals may be attracted, or you may be able, if you are able to perceive them, find them gathering in those areas. This is because it is their form of connecting to the mycelial network. They actually can use that ring, and it grows in a ring for the purpose of actually allowing other beings of different frequencies to tap into that network when they need to. In a sense, you could say, euphemistically, the fairy rings of different kinds of mushrooms that crop up from the mycelial network underground so that there can be an interface with different kinds of nature spirits to that web of information, are almost, in a sense, kind of like their Stonehenge. You understand? So it forms that circle to capture that energy, to transmit that energy in a very efficient way. It forms a kind of energy web lens by being in a circular form, and that helps aid and assist in the amplification of the energy, of the information, and it also transmits it to the particular vibration needed for the elementals and the nature spirits to be able to access that information based on their nature. Now, there are other forms of communication and social networks in nature. When you're talking about the idea of the elements themselves, not elementals, but the elements themselves, what you would call the hard minerals, what you would call rocks, what you would call boulders, what you would call foothills, what you would call mountains. There is another system that is concurrent with what we are describing that uses the energy web in a different way. One thing that only very few of your scientists have begun to realize and are beginning to investigate is that there is what we might term a deep resonance field that exists that is, generally speaking, on a vibratory level that is below your ability to sense. If you are sensitive enough, you can feel it, you can tap into it, but generally speaking, it is not always audible to you. It is a very deep, thrumming, vibrating, resonant energy, the deep energy resonance field that is part of the electromagnetic field of your planet that it issues, but it is tuned and pitched in such a way that it actually forms a communication network between all of the crystalline minerals and rocks and mountains on your planet. This is the vibratory level of the nature of that kind of consciousness, of mineral or crystalline consciousness. And it communicates readily in a variety of ways through that deep resonance field. Now, some of your scientists are also beginning to understand and realize that everything is made of consciousness. Everything is self-aware in its own way. It may not be self-aware in the way that you express it, but nevertheless, it is still a reflection. It knows itself as a reflection of all that is in its own way, in its own interpretation. And they are recognizing that consciousness is pervasive and permeates everything in creation. Very few cutting-edge quantum physicists are beginning to explore this. The term they have used for this is called panpsychism, or the idea that they are now beginning to express that there is a proto-consciousness field that exists everywhere, and out of which consciousness in its various forms of expression may arise. So the proto-consciousness field itself is another way that many beings throughout creation will form this sort of energy net and energy web. This is generally what is used by what you would call animals on your planet, humans on your planet, in a variety of ways. They tap into the idea of this consciousness field. And based on the configuration of the consciousness, in other words, what kind of a being it is, because the kind of being you are is a description of how you are energetically arranged as a kind of a matrix to filter this consciousness field through yourself and express it in the ways that are germane and relevant for the description of what you are, of who you are. So animals, humans, all that kind of life will utilize the consciousness field and will, through themselves, filter it in such a way as to create different frequencies, different vibrations that are given off that are specific to those particular types of animals, those particular types of beings. So this is what it means when you learn to talk cat, talk dog, talk fox, talk dolphin, talk any kind of animal, is picking up on the specific resonant frequency of the consciousness field that they are using, their particular wavelength, their particular, well, if you wish, radio station, to dial in yourself to those frequencies. Now, the idea of humanity, in a sense, not being in any way, shape, or form better than any of this, has itself, by definition, one interesting and unusual difference in all of this, and that is not that other animals can't do it if they need to, but the idea of humanity, of what you would call sentiency in your form, has the ability to actually, and is built into the ability to actually go up and down the range of these frequencies we are describing, so that you can tune in, so that you can, in a sense, funnel through you all the different wavelengths, all the different frequencies, all the different forms of communication and resonance to express an amalgamation of these ideas, a kind of combination, a kind of synergy of all these ideas. You are the form on Earth that can process all of this into one large overall understanding and expression of holism on your planet, which is why you think of yourselves in many ways as the stewards of the earth, of the land, the humans, of the sea, the dolphins and the whales. So the dolphins and whales also have this ability to go through a range of frequencies very naturally to pick up on and tie together and link together and express synergistically the idea of many different kinds of forms of life and expressions on your planet. This is why, in a sense, it is given to you to be the caretakers. Now, in the past, because of negative definitions and negative belief systems, many humans on your planet have thought that this meant that you have domination over all the other life on your planet. This is not the case. In the old interpretation, in some of your ancient scriptures, where it says that mankind has dominion over the earth and all life on earth, the ancient term dominion in that sense meant caretaker, not overlord. So the idea is dominion is given to you to be the one to process and synergize and caretake and represent all the different forms of life on your planet and nurture and support and give life to all of these things along with them in a way that creates this holistic net to be amplified and magnified so that all life forms can pick up on the information they require to sustain themselves in the best possible way, the most beneficial possible way for all concerned. In a sense, you have the ability to actually become the frequency of the net itself, and thus, in any given situation or circumstance, connect into whatever kind of consciousness expression you need to, be it the trees, be it the animals, be it the rocks, by simply being sensitive enough to the fact that you are the synergizers to go within yourself and get more precise ability to tell the difference between the different frequencies that are expressed by the different forms of life, so that in honing in on those frequencies you can have the kinds of ongoing communication and exchange of information that is possible to have with all the different forms of life on your planet. You form your own nature social network on a certain resonant frequency that is itself representative of the combination of all the frequencies. Is this making some sense to you? Yes. All right. So the idea, again, is that, of course, everything expresses itself in a different way, a different modality. And it's about really tuning in and, in a sense, taking on the mantle of that modality and expressing it as strongly through your reflective aspects, your reflective nature as you possibly can, to strengthen and amplify and reinforce that modality for that form of life. So when you are learning to communicate with a dog, with a cat, with a bird, you are actually taking on the resonance, fine-tuning to that resonance, and reflecting it back in a way that actually starts a back and forth kind of energy beat. And in that energy beat, as it levels itself into that particular frequency, you then start to perceive communication in the form in which it is expressed from that animal, because you are expressing that aspect within yourself, because you contain all those frequencies that are representative of all the animals and all the trees and all the rocks and the sky and the sea and everything on your planet. So it's about becoming a very fine-tuned station, a very fine-tuned antenna, receiver, and transmitter, so that you can really start to perceive those different frequencies in a very fine-grained way and really lock into them much more strongly, so that you can amplify that vibration between yourself and the life form you are communicating with, and then start to really interpret and transceive the communication in the modality that it is expressing itself from, because you become like them. This is the secret of the shamans, in the sense of actually being able to tap into parallel realities in such a way that they actually represent themselves as the animal they are in communication with. This is the source of the idea of seeing shamans turn into birds, turn into jaguars, turn into various animals. It's not in a sense that any molecular rearrangement has happened. What is happening is that, like the sages that Willa has spoken of, they have the ability to understand their connection to parallel versions of themselves in parallel realities so strongly that they can actually represent themselves and bring in a representation from a parallel reality strongly enough that you actually perceive that parallel reality representation instead of the human form that was basically in the parallel reality that you inhabit. So they are presenting a reflective mirror so strongly that you think they have actually changed their shape. You follow me? But all you're getting is a reflection from a parallel reality, because the shaman is being a perfect mirror angled at just the correct angle to reflect that parallel reality expression of their consciousness from another parallel reality into your consciousness. So a shaman is a perfect mirror that operates at different angles, reflecting different realities to you. Do you understand? It is not about the idea of molecular change. That's not what shapeshifters do. They take advantage of this consciousness field in such a way as to extend beyond the consciousness field of what you consider to be your universe and go into the consciousness field of other universes, and therefore can reflect things and expressions of consciousness from those other parallel realities into the reality in which they originated. So this all comes down to the idea that you are ensconced in, embedded in, immersed in a titanic, infinite social network of energy webs at certain vibratory levels, and you can tap into these more consciously as you start to explore within yourself your caretaker nature to all of nature, and remind yourself, again, first and foremost, that you are not above nature, not below nature, not separate from nature, but are nature. So find your natural selves. This is why we suggest to you in many occasions that it's not about finding out how to be normal. It's about finding out how to be your natural self, because your natural self is tapped in, does understand these connections, and when you relax the idea of what you think you're supposed to be and actually allow yourself to be what you are as nature expressed you, you will find yourself being a part of nature, not separate from it, and these kinds of communications and your ability to tap into nature's social network, you will find will already be inherent within your skills, your talents, your abilities to perceive this more and more readily. Does this make sense? Yes. All right. So let us proceed in a natural way and open up to the idea of sharing at this time, if you wish. As you prepare, we remind you of these things in brief bites to start just spurring your energy to consider different vibrations in such a way that it will, once the ball has started rolling, pick up its own momentum within you, because it will be of a nature where you will eventually recognize what it is, because you're already familiar with it on a certain level. And as you allow even just the beginning of these frequencies we are imparting to you today to start amplifying, or even consider them in your thoughts, it will start to rearrange your neurological net in such a way as to make it more easy for you to let that continue as a process and accelerate and amplify to its own ends, to whatever degree and whatever expression is relevant for you. You follow? Yes. All right.
Hello, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
My question is, what would happen if you come without, not by Darryl, but you on your physical form? What would happen?
If my physical form was cut?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No. If your physical form would come here. No. If you
would come to your planet?
Yes. Yes.
What would happen to whom? Someone like you?
To us.
Well, at this time, our energy frequency is so much higher than yours that if you were to stand in our presence, it would force all of the things within you that you might have segregated to come together and integrate, but in such a way that you might not be ready for, and it could cause what you would call psychic shock. Do you understand?
Yes.
That is why we give you this information, so that you can absorb the information and raise your frequency and allow your frequency to get closer to our frequency, so that we can blend together more harmoniously and so that our frequency won't overwhelm yours.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
However, I will say this. The children on your planet are far more ready than the adults to meet us, because they haven't forgotten as much of who they are, and their frequencies are already higher. And as we have reminded you before, the children that have been being born on your planet for some time now are not just a new generation, they are a different species. and they have different genetic codes that allow them to remember more of who they are and allow them to integrate more with other dimensional beings more smoothly, more easily. So this is one of the reasons why the idea of the hybrid children coming to your planet to live among you will find that some of the first ambassador connections they will make will be to children on your planet before the adults.